Good morning, everyone. Happy Easter. He is risen from our Christian tradition. This is the day that it's Easter, Easter Sunday morning. This is the day in our Christian tradition, as I was getting ready to say, where we celebrate the resurrection of our Savior. So I hope you are having an outstanding, outstanding day. Um, Coming to you today from the Cascade Foothills at a place called the River Rock Inn here in Arlington, Washington. I'm not sure if you all knew this or not, but right after I retired from the corporate world, my wife and I and our two kids bought a 18-room boutique hotel and fine dining restaurant north of Seattle, and it was our way of really reconnecting and getting into hospitality business, and that was, gosh, that was 15 years ago. And about 10 years ago, we sold our property, but have remained connected in the hospitality world through our company called In Connections LLC for the last 10 years. My wife is focused on quality assurance work and has been working with bed and breakfast across the state of Washington through the Washington Bed and Breakfast Guild for the last 10 years, doing work there. I've been speaking to conventions and different things on hospitality for 10 years and just really love it. And part of the reason that I love it is it's a small business, and small businesses have a special place in my heart because these are people who are really, really going for it. And when you begin to think about strategy and strategic plans, these people have to live it out every day. And they have to deliver it every day, because if not, they're not in business. And so our dear friends Bob and Lisa Watkins here they built this place by hand. I wish I could pan around the 5 acres of the property here, just lovely fir trees and trails. And behind me, you see the sun coming in and causing a reflection this morning on the River Rock fireplace that is sort of the signature thing here. This place has won awards across the state for many years just on the service and the hospitality that they provide. And so, as I mentioned, they're just great, great people and believers too. So that's some lucky strike bonus. And so, again, greetings from the River Rock Inn this morning. Let's talk a little bit about Lesson 3, and then we'll go into Lesson 4 in just a second for MSOM 612. Lesson 3, the discussion question, talked about organizational honesty, but talked about it from a church perspective. And so I know many of you have either worked, or maybe you have children, or maybe you're connected, or certainly have gone through um, kids and youth ministries at church. And so what I thought I would do is throw that one out there for you to discuss organizational honesty, because we can talk about it in the context of work or jobs or things like that. But where the rubber really hits the road is when we get into churches and volunteer organizations and things like that. And how do you begin to deal with that? And so that was the gist of that discussion. I do want to encourage you, however, though, I don't want to have to invoke a Wednesday rule on these things, but I do want you to make sure that you get your posts in, your initial posts in earlier. Mine will always be in there, but I'm really interested in a very small class for you all to be able to communicate between each other on those, because these are I think, good topics for you to be able to hash about, if you will. So that was the discussion this week. The application for this week was based upon a video from a Scandinavian guy, and again, I apologize because he's kind of difficult to follow sometimes. But he really talked about organizational complexity and reducing complexity. And I can tell you, having been in very large corporations, that corporations or churches or even smaller organizations do not design their organization for complexity. But what ends up happening is, again, when you keep adding things to organizations, or you keep adding things to what you're doing, and you don't take things away, or you don't step back and take a very broad look at all the services and things that you provide, sometimes it just gets layered on, and it gets very, very hard to follow, hard to execute, and again, very complex. So this speaker, I thought, listed some very good things for you to look at from an organizational perspective to make sure that you can eliminate some of the complexity that you have in your organization. And who knows? I mean, there may be some things you can look at and some application you can make on that to your personal lives, because Our lives, let's face it, are like companies sometimes with kids and husbands and wives and spouses and all the other things that we have to do. It certainly is not getting less complex. If anything, it's getting more complex. So that was the gist of the application exercise for lesson 3. And then the course project edition this week was focused on the internal analysis. So remember, you provided the overview the first week. The second week, you looked at the external analysis. So all the things that are happening out and about throughout where you compete in the world and with the governments and technology and cultural shifts and things of that nature. Well, this week really focused on the internal analysis. So you looked at the strengths, weaknesses of the leadership in your organization, the strengths and leadership of your brands, if you will, and other things in the organization to come up with those things that could be an issue, which leads us into lesson 4. Lesson 4, the discussion talks about really responding to a threat. And this happens, I don't know what type of business that you're in, but one morning you wake up, you have your coffee, and it's a great day, and you walk into your job and you realize that you're either your number one competitor or somebody else who hadn't been a competitor in the past are now introducing products into your category. And they're big, and they have deep pockets, and you know they're going to spend to be able to reach the consumer. So what you enjoyed that morning from your morning coffee to 10 o'clock is, oh my gosh, what are we going to do? How are we going to respond to a threat? This has happened to me many, many times. And so what I'm asking you to do is to just provide some generic responses to how would you begin to attack this, because these are things that you probably didn't build into your strategic plan, but all of a sudden they are very real, very heavy issues that you as a leader of a department or you as a leader of an organization will have to address if you want to remain viable going forward. So that is responding to a threat. The application for lesson 4 talks about how do you extend the life or how do you innovate. One of the key things is making sure that your company is relevant over the long term. And this is really, really hard because what happens sometimes is you really get sucked into what you offer. I use this as an example all the time. When I joined ConAgra, and that was, gosh, when was that? That was 20 years ago, I guess. We were selling Healthy Choice dinners 2 for $5. When I left ConAgra 15 years ago, we were selling Healthy Choice dinners 2 for $5. Last week, when I went to a grocery store to buy some lunch items, because we've been staying in hotels a little bit while we're traveling, state residence ends, so we'll buy some lunch type stuff. I bought Healthy Choice dinners 2 for $5. So there has been no change in the pricing of that product. It's still the same price. But there, if you've been in the grocery business, you know that in order to remain competitive from a profit perspective, you've cost reduced the product, you've done a lot of different things. So the product tastes different because it's a cheaper product, but the prices have stayed the same because ConAgra has been unwilling to provide any type of innovation in food. They're continuing to do the same thing that they did 20 years ago. And so the real question here on the application is how do you extend the life, or how do you innovate to make sure that you're viable in the future? And this is something be interesting to see whether or not it's a product or a service in your own company that you've chosen here, and how you're working with that and working through that. Because again, if you don't extend lives, the product will die. Or the service will die. If you don't innovate, someone was going to come in and do it for you. And so again, there are tons of examples of companies who have not extended the life of their products, and there are companies who have not innovated, and they're no longer out there. They're in the trash heap of businesses that are no longer around. So that's the application for lesson 4. And then the course project edition this week is on strategic issues. So here's the theory. You provided the overview for your company. You've done an external analysis to look at all the threats and opportunities that are being provided by the external analysis that you've done. You've also, in lesson 3, looked at the internal analysis to see here are your strengths, here are your weaknesses. And out of all of these things now, this is where the rubber hits the road. you're going to have some strategic issues that are created by those threats from the external area. And you're going to have some opportunities that are created there as well. And then you're going to have some issues that are created because of the internal analysis. And so what you need to do now is just simply list those strategic issues. And so hopefully there are many, because the strategic issues are an outcropping of the analysis and the research work that you've done on that company. And so now you're going to have a bunch of issues that are going to crop up. Now, just a sneak peek and move ahead to lesson 5 here, what's going to happen in lesson 5 is you're going to begin to prioritize which issues you're going to address, because trust me, you're going to have so many issues, you're not going to be able to address them all. But this week, it's just really identifying what those issues are. So don't get focused on the solution this week. It's just really identifying those key strategic issues. All right? I hope you all have a great week. Like I said, I'm back in the States now for a while. My cell phone's working, the email is working. So if you need me, make sure that you reach out and contact me. All right? Have a great week. Thanks.